أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذي أذهب الله عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي أفوض أمري إلى الله بصير بالعباد سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We continue our journey into self-realization through Quran, and currently we're doing Ayatul Kursi. I have digressed a little bit in the past two sessions where we've gone into the details of this understanding of Shafa'at. And we've been talking about the Holy Prophet. Personally, for me, growing up, I don't think I had that kind of exposure to the life of the Holy Prophet himself, because there's a lot of concentration on other aspects of the Prophet's life, for example, his grandchildren and etc. So to truly go deep into the life of the Holy Prophet wasn't something that I experienced personally, and that's why I find it very I find it a very something new to go into for myself, because what I want to do with this conversation around the life of the Holy Prophet is to make it a part of normal dialogue where we can relate to him and make him as a role model in our everyday lives. And that's why we know that he is so closely attached to the Quran. He was the vessel through which the Quran came to us. He was the one who was the messenger of this word of God, which we call a miracle. So in a lot of aspects, we have to understand that the Holy Prophet, he was chosen as a conduit. He was chosen as the messenger of the word of God for a reason, because we've been talking about this aspect where we were saying that the Holy Prophet had this human side to him, where his struggle was real, his pain was real, his the way he dealt with the situations was very real. So it wasn't like there was some superpower because of which one can just discount the idea that he was never tempted or he never felt angered or all those things, because being a human being, he experienced those emotions, he experienced those feelings. But what is remarkable about him is how he overcame and how he was so mindful and how he was so aware. Anxiety, fear, panic, these are part of human condition. And if we take it away from the life of the Holy Prophet, then we actually do a disservice, because if somebody is not experiencing the darkness, these experiences, then how is that person overcoming them? And if they don't have these experiences, and if they don't have to overcome them, then how can a person like that be a role model for us? That's why we see Quran talking about the Holy Prophet again and again, about the Holy Prophet being comforted by God himself. So in this idea, when we move forward, I was very inspired to look into a verse from Surah Hujarat. It's verse number 2. And in Surah Hujarat, the verse number 2 is talking about, I will read the translation. O you who have believed, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet, or be loud to him in speech like the loudness of some of you to others, lest your deeds become worthless while you perceive not. So this is a verse that used to intrigue me for a very long time. I would come across it and I would always wonder, how is this verse relevant to you and me today? And why is it part of this miraculous book, the Quran? If it was just for a time period, fixed when the Holy Prophet was physically alive, because the translation is saying that do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet. So physically, Prophet is not here with us. He's not talking. So how do I raise my voice above him? And we know that Quran will not give us any message, the space, the how we calculate investment and opportunity cost, and we put a value to something. Quran space is very valuable. Every verse taken up in the Quran is extremely valuable. So what is the value of this verse? And I want to look at it in 2-3 different ways and connect it to our connection to the Holy Prophet, because he is somebody we want to follow. We want to be able to mark a path for us, which is of those who are successful. And we want to use the role model, the best of the role models for us. And yet time separates us and physical existence separates us. So that's why Quran then becomes a place of connecting us to that era, to those people. But we need to understand how. And what I'm going to share with you are, as I always say, they're just my personal insights. I'm here to be corrected. They may not apply to anybody at all. They're just something that I can resonate with, and it really clicks with me, these insights. So in the past 1 week, I came across a lot of buzz around this movie Lady of Heaven, and then there was a conversation around it which was about the discord between the Sunnis and the Shias. And the Sunnis and the Shias, they both have their own, they have their own narratives that they stick to. And how is it that Quran can come to the rescue of a situation which creates so much pain, chaos, separation? Because truly, in the spiritual journey, everything is about unity, to come together, to be one. And a spiritual understanding of community for the Muslims must mean unity, because while the Prophet said that there will be so many sects and we will be divided, we cannot forget our duty and our dedication to the idea of uniting everybody. And I'm not just saying uniting Sunnis and Shias, uniting together as humanity. And that is what we look in the life of the Holy Prophet. What was that factor in his personality that could be so cohesive, that we see the Jews and the Christians being protected in Medina? We see that the Prophet came up with laws to give them that sense of security in his riyasat. And we see that that at times of war and at times of lack of protection, even Muslim soldiers were assigned to protect the Christians and the Jews. And that is something that we see as a human gesture. I mean, when we come to a level of understanding of humanity and being humane, that is what we would expect any human being to do, to be there for the minorities, to be there to protect. That's just a human gesture. We would protect an animal on the road in danger. So to be able to say that Muslims need to be there for an XYZ community says a lot about the humanistic nature of this religion, and also the purveyor of this religion, the leader of this religion, of the Holy Prophet. And that cannot be ignored. If anything goes against that, then something has not been done right, something has gone wrong. Because a lot of time, the present day condition of religions, maybe Islam too, um, is very cut off and distanced from the humaneness of being a human being. The sensitivity seems to be missing. So we literally desensitize a lot of parts of us to become quote unquote Muslims, to consider certain people najas and dirty, to not feel for certain people. I've seen charity organizations in the community that will only cater to their own kin within the community who follow the same sect in Islam. So Shias will only give charity to Shias, and Sunnis will only give charity to Sunnis. And the funds are not available if you are from any other religion, even if you are dying, even if you're sick. The paperwork will not allow you to get in the system. It's as if we had a heart and we had to harden it and we had to cut it off from our humaneness and then, go against our human nature and our fitra to think that that can get us somewhere, that is somehow noble, that is somehow a way to salvation. I mean, there are so many aspects to it. I'm talking about charity. Then some people will say you should have a lot of children because we want to expand the ummah of the Prophet. And these things are very exclusive. They're talking about a religion that is so self-absorbed and self glorifying that you kind of want to create a wall between yourself and the others and say, I want to expand the deen, and I want to expand this religion, and I want to be on a mission, for me and myself and my deen and my religion and my beliefs, because I think that is right. And rightly so. Some people will come and argue and they will say, well, why would I pick a certain sect and follow it if I didn't think that it was exclusively better than others? I found it better than others. That's why I choose this particular sect and I choose to stay in it. And I choose it above yours, for example, because I think mine is better. That's why I'm in it. And if that is the narrative that we keep following, then a veil comes between us and the truth, because it is not about finding the better in terms of superiority, or who is right and wrong. But if we were to be really, really real and humane about this, then the Hindu will say the same thing. I am better. The Jew will say I am better. The Shia will say I am better. The Sunni will say I am better. Everyone will say I am better, so hence I am in it. And somebody who's not part of any of these religions, who's perhaps not even a human being, will look at all of these humans and say, how is it possible that all of them think that each one of them is correct and heaven belongs to each one of them? Because if heaven is one place, each one of them thinks that they're all going there. Where is the sense in that? So what are they thinking? What is it that they're missing in the story? And what is missing in the story is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself says in the Quran that I have made you separate and different. And if I wanted, I could have given you just one religion, but I chose not to because I wanted you to know one another. I want you to know one another. Recently, I was narrating this incident that happened. I don't know if I've expressed it before or not, but in my art group where I teach art, we have a lot of students coming in from different parts of the world. So I had one student, I have her on my group. She's from Israel. And most of the people other than her are not from Israel. They, of course, because I teach Islamic art and there's a focus on Muslim art, most of them are Muslims. And a huge group of them come from South Africa. South Africa is a place of a lot of activism, because within the 20th century, there has been a lot of, freedom fighting in that country. So we see people who are coming from an experience of fighting for their rights in terms of apartheid. They have a lot of feminism, being actively, worked on over there. There's a lot of activism in that sphere. And then there's a very active work happening there in terms of Palestine. So because when you're an activated person, when you have an activism going on within you, then you can't gobble down the injustice. It irks you, it upsets you, and you feel very invested in a cause. So I saw this happen on my group, that people would post different classes during COVID. Different people would say somebody's giving a free class, let's join there. Because in COVID, people were giving a lot of free classes. Everybody was at home, and it was a gesture of kindness that I'm teaching something, come and learn, because you're sitting at home on Zoom. So one of the classes that was brought to my attention and that was posted there was happening in Israel. And the students were Palestinian and Palestine, activists, Palestinian activists in different parts of the world, but they were Palestine activists. And it suddenly, from a place where we were trying to practice Sufi art, meditative art, Zen, art, the group became almost like an occupied territory, which was being bartered, which was being put in a place where there was a discussion, there was anger, there were political views being shared, and I was being forced to throw out the Israeli from my group. And I was being constantly told that you need to tell her to leave the group, otherwise we will not stay. And I've been an activist all my life. I pray for Palestine. I stand by my brothers and sisters in Palestine. And I feel for them. But what was a prophetic way to deal with the situation where it's an art group? It wasn't an army zone. There was no direct harm happening to anybody. These were people who were there for a particular intention with a particular reason. They were struggling mentally, emotionally in COVID. Everybody was trying to pitch in their little bit of good deed. And this lady also tried her best with the best of her intentions. And it was very intriguing for me why one Israeli person would allow herself to stay amongst 100 Muslims in one group. And what was her motivation? And I could clearly see that she had a love for art. She had a love for a world where art unites us, where we can find a common language of expression. And that expression was beauty. It wasn't about activism in art. It was about beauty, about expressing beauty, sharing beauty, appreciating beauty. And that was our common ground, why we were all together in one place. So there was something that was uniting us. There was something that was keeping us in one place. And I felt very happy to see that we are all together in this space. But again and again, every time an incident would happen between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and some atrocity would be committed against the Palestinians, the group would get riled up and news clips would be shared on my group about what is going on and how wrong it is. And then the situation would get very radicalized within that small WhatsApp group. There were personal slanders, and there was indirect pointing of fingers towards that lady. And I wanted to understand what would be the right thing for me to do, because somehow suddenly I was the group leader. And I consulted my blessed teachers, who are very progressive, who believe in unity, who believe in one humanity. And they said, please go back and look at the character of the Holy Prophet and think about what he would do. Can you imagine the Holy Prophet throwing somebody out of his house? Can you imagine the Holy Prophet being rude to anybody? Can you imagine somebody comes for art and the Holy Prophet says, get out of here, you're not welcome here? What would be the prophetic character be? And time and again, we see that the Prophet would always prefer dialogue. He would always prefer conversation. He always preferred focusing on those things that unite us instead of those that divide us. He was never on the offensive. He was always on the defensive. If he was always on the defensive, what had this lady done to us in that group to hurt or attack or offend us? She was not sending out any posts. She was not telling us Israel is a good glorified nation. She was not saying how Zionists and Zions are like amazing. She wasn't doing any of that. She was just minding her own business, sharing her art, staying on the group, sharing art classes with everybody. But what happened is that when one of the classes was posted and the students in the class joined that Zoom link, when they were introduced to the teacher in the class, they were told that that class was happening on occupied territory, or lands that the Palestinians owned, and now Israelis were living in the settlements, right? They're Israeli settlements. And then the class had to proceed. And it was such a trigger for all the students over there that they protested. I wasn't there, so I don't know what they did, but then most of them boycotted the class and left. And when I found out about it, I felt like this was a very good opportunity for two nations, for two people who don't talk, who don't communicate, who have so many grievances and resentments, to come to a place where they can learn from each other, know about each other, And time and again, we see that what did the Holy Prophet do? This woman who was throwing trash, she was throwing trash on the Holy Prophet every single day. And every single day, the Holy Prophet would take the same route. He didn't even change his route. He knew what was coming. He did not change the route. And every single day he went by the same route. Trash was thrown on him. And the day that trash didn't come, he goes and he visits this woman. And she's so moved by the kindness of the Holy Prophet that her delusions or illusions or misconceptions or misunderstandings about what Islam was, who the Prophet was, completely changed. She was so moved. Did he go and preach to her? Did he protest? Did he put up placards? Did he begin a movement? He didn't do any of that. But I'm sure what the Holy Prophet was practicing was a lot of inner patience, a lot of compassion, a lot of empathy, because to be able to do something like that, you need to say, I'm sure this woman has a disturbed life. There is something disturbing about her life that is making her so angry and resentful. I'm sure she has been taught the wrong thing. So there was a lot of empathy, there was a lot of kindness, there was a lot of love and compassion for the goodness that was latent within her, the goodness that had not yet manifested itself. Right now, only the darkness had overcome and formed a rust on her heart, which was manifesting itself by showing this kind of anger towards the Prophet, where the trash was being thrown on the Prophet every single time. And the Prophet finds it in his heart, this passion, this expansion in his soul to embrace someone who is so hateful, was outright so hateful. The Prophet had the love to embrace that person. And Prophet's love was so big that it overwhelmed the hatred of this woman. So a lot of people, they come to me and they say, you know, we try to stay positive and we try to be good and we try to keep a positive outlook. But, you know, there's so many toxic people and they just lower our energy and we start vibrating at a lower energy. And I would definitely say, don't keep toxic friends. You know, don't be in a toxic job. Something you can change, please change. Your environment, your friends, your people affect you. But then you are in situations where you can't change it, right? Perhaps you've signed a contract, you can't leave that job. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's an elderly person in your home. If you can distance yourself, well and good. But if you can't distance yourself, what would you do? What we can do is something that Imam Ali says, if the bad cannot leave their bad, why should the good leave their good? And so I grew up with this. You know, my grandfather, my mother, they would always repeat this. And it gives you this understanding that, yes, I don't want to be like that person who is full of hate. If I'm the same, then what's the difference? Then what I'm condemning is not them, I'm condemning the same thing within me. And so what do we do when we are stuck in a position where we cannot get out and people are negative and toxic? We go inwards. We go inwards and we start working on the expansion of our soul, of collecting a reservoir of so much positivity within us, and so much good within us, that your energy becomes so overwhelming that in the face of someone's negativity, your positivity will outshine everything else. That your positivity, your love and compassion will overwhelm and overrule any kind of negativity, you know. And it's not ours, it's God's light, God's love. We connect ourselves to that who is overpowering, who is all powerful, who is all loving, who is all compassionate, who is Wudud, intimately loving. And when we connect, when we just say these words that, God, this is difficult, I am struggling, this is difficult, I'm panicking, I'm anxious, I feel upset, I don't feel like going to this job, I don't feel like meeting this person, it's so difficult, I still have to do it. And you just take a pause for a moment and you connect yourself with the light of God, with the love of God, with the compassion and wisdom of God. And you say, God, I'm confused. I don't know how it will go. I might lose my temper. I might lose my vision. I don't know what to do. Can I please seek your help and support? I open myself to your love and support. And when we connect to that, suddenly we are not the ones expecting good from others. We're not the ones with the begging bowl saying, please give me love, please give me acceptance, please give me validation, please give me kindness. I'm a broken soul, I'm a hurt soul, I want this, I want. Suddenly you become the giver. You become the one who can give, and we emulate the source. I mean, yeah, we call God the source, but God is the source of everything. But what does the source of a river do? If you go to the source of the river, you'll see that it gives. Water flows out from the mountain, it never goes back in. So the source is always giving, we become the source. And we can start, if we start that conscious connection with God, and we start connecting with how we can connect with the ultimate source who is overflowingly giving, then we fill ourselves with so much goodness and positivity that it overflows out of us and goes on to others. That we are full and now we have enough to give to others. And you know, a few years ago, I was doing a healing with a healer. And at that time, I was a little new to the idea of energy healing and, you know, these mantras and all of those things. It used to be a little uncomfortable for me when I used to hear new concepts. But I would then go and ask them what that means. I mean, something makes me uncomfortable, then I would ask them, because a lot of healers in the West, they use a lot of symbols that come from Egyptian origins. And the way we are brought up, we see Pharaoh and the pharaonic culture and the symbols very anti-Islam, you know. And so if we see these symbols, the eye of Ra, or these things, it perturbs us, right? It disturbs us. We're like, no, this is all kafir stuff. I don't want to be close to this. But we should go and explore it. When I went to explore all of this, I found some very fascinating truths. I found a lot of wisdom. I found a lot of things we miss out because of our veils of bias and our preconceived notions and ideas. There's a lot of learning there. So anyway, when I was doing this healing, um, one of the healers, she would say to me during her healing, she would say, Fatma, do you give God the permission to begin this healing process? Do you give God the permission to put his light into your heart? You give God the permission to heal your wound. She would say things like that. And I'm like, who am I to give permission to God? Like, oh my God, that's just blasphemous. That's just, oh my God. And I wouldn't be able to concentrate in my meditation or anything, right? I'd just be like, oh my God, please forgive me. I'm being blasphemous. And it was really, really disturbing. But I knew that the lady who was doing my healing was extremely God-centric and very, I always felt that purity in her of coming back to God and connecting to Quran and all of that. So it would intrigue me a lot. And a lot of what she practiced, she would say, was very intuitive. So a lot of these healers are very grounded in their intuition. But for me, it was very essential that I would find a way to, make sure that Islam validates every practice. And what I realized is that what actually she meant was something which I now realize is part of our everyday mindfulness. And what that is the idea between free will and destiny. So when Musa, I don't know if this story is associated with Hazrat Musa or somebody, I think I repeat it a lot of times, that this man was stuck in a storm in the ocean and he was about to drown. And, he was praying and he was saying that, God save me, God save me, God save me, I'm going to drown. And from remotely somewhere, a boat comes and this guy says, look, you're drowning. My boat is fine. I'll take you to the shore. And he says, no, but I asked God to help me. You shoo away. I want God to help me. And when he dies, he says, God, you didn't come to help me. And God says, look, I sent you that guy to help you. You just didn't take that help. I'm like, no, but I wanted you to come. So there was a destiny meant for him. God created means for him to have a safe, to be safely moved to the shore. That could have been his destiny. He had a choice and a free will between what destiny he will make for himself. He prayed, he asked, he got the help. But his preconceived ideas distorted his decision about the free will that he had. And he let go of what God had given him. So in that very small moment, he let go. He did not practice the free will that we are meant and we are supposed to actively use. Now, in that moment, if he had said to himself, God, I give you the permission to help me, that would mean that I give myself the permission to receive the help that God has sent my way. You see, do we give ourselves the permission to do so many things? Like what? Do I give myself the permission to finally forgive somebody? Do I give myself the permission to finally let go of grudge and resentment that I've held for a very long time? Do I give myself the permission to accept that I have some jealousy and I would like it to be gone because I don't know how to get rid of this jealousy? And last night I was talking to somebody and I was saying that we are all wounded and we are all broken. We go through a lot of experiences in life that breaks us and makes us broken. And it's like we have these inner wounds. All right, we have these deep wounds within us, and we don't know how to heal them. They're just wounds, and we can feel it, and they get triggered, and then we say, "This one hurt me, that one hurt me." She knows that this is my weak point, but she still said it, and it hurt me. How can she say this about me? And we get hurt, and we have these wounds, right? Now imagine you have a cut on your finger. Okay, it's a wound. You have a cut on your finger. If I ignore the idea that I have a wound, and if I don't want to accept the idea that I actually have cut my finger, and I don't wear gloves, and I use all kinds of crazy detergents, and I keep washing the dishes with my hand, and keep washing the bathroom, and I keep doing all the work that I want to do, and I don't care for this wound by saying that I have a wound. I don't know how to heal this wound. Can I go inside my skin, tell the cells, please come together, now heal my skin? Can I go and do that? I can't do that. I don't know how to heal my wound. I don't know how wounds heal. That's not a knowledge that I have. I don't know what it is that possesses the seed for it to break itself and then grow. I don't know how to grow and heal. I don't do that. That's not my work. But if I were to acknowledge that I have a wound, then the only thing I would do is keep it safe. I would band-aid it, I would protect it, I would keep it safe until the one who heals has healed it. I'll have to keep it safe. The same way, in the healing of this finger, I took a decision, I made an intention. When I put a band-aid on and I decided that I'm not going to put it in water and I'm not going to expose it to crazy detergents, I am saying, God, I give you the permission to heal my finger. So there's a conscious intention and there's a conscious effort in allowing God to do what he does. The healing is there, and we notice it that the day I start to care for that wound, and the day I keep it dry, and the day I keep it, I change the band-aid every day, and the day I allow it to heal, it will automatically start healing, right? Any wound, when allowed to heal, will heal. The first thing is, will you allow it to heal? Will you take the measures to say, I take this conscious step, I set the intention, and I allow God to proceed with the process of healing this wound. And this process could be a surgery to heal it. You know, if somebody shoots a bullet at you, you need a surgeon to take it out. It's a very painful process. So there can be an emotional surgery. It could be just a dressing with a band-aid. This could be just putting an ointment or doing nothing, and it will heal depending on the intensity of the wound. But we need to understand, first of all, there is a wound. And once we know that there is a wound, then we can give God the permission to heal it. The reason so many people are not healing is because they're not acknowledging the wound. So they're not giving God the permission to heal it. The healing is always there. It's bound into our nature. Every cell in the body is only healing. Then why do cancers happen? Then why do tumors happen? It's because something obstructed that constant flow of healing. How do I know that there's constant healing? You cut your nail, it automatically grows. You cut your hair, it automatically grows. You cut your skin, it automatically grows. The body's nature by default is healing. When there is lack of it, then we have created an obstruction. That is where our free will comes in. And so, in this whole process of healing the world, we have a free will. We have a conscious decision to make. Are we going to perpetuate our wounds, separate ourselves from others? And this is where I want to bring everybody back to the verse where I started. And I'm sorry that I digress because I had to explain it in this way. If we think we know better than the Prophet, if we think we have better ideas of what is right and what is wrong, if we think we know better than him, then we will do the things that he never did. We will point fingers, we will throw people out, we will bash them, we will be nasty, we will lose our ikhlaq, we will not use the prophetic way. Sadly, people have is this understanding about our lofty personalities like the Holy Prophet, like Imam Hassan, who were not asked by God to be this actively fighter, in the field, the battlefield. The Prophet fought a lot of battles as a defense thing, but he did not go on a defensive to conquer the world to spread Islam. That wasn't his nature. He did not do that. And what we see after the Prophet is that somehow one group starts to feel that they need to do what the Prophet never did, what Imam Ali never did, right? There was always a collaboration between people who had differences. There was always support. There was cohesion. The priority and intention was always the unity. Because unity is the key factor in deep inner spiritual growth, and unity is the factor in our outer growth. They say, right, united we stand, divided we fall. We are falling because we are not able to understand that the slogan of being right, that I am right, is actually the wrong thing to do because it is dividing us. So do we leave our right? That's a tricky question. Do we leave our right? And for that, we need to go on a journey to understand what is right. What if my right is actually not right? What if my right needs more discussion? What if my right needs more elaboration and more research? Have I thought about that? Because the Hindu thinks his right is right. The Jews thinks his right is right. They're the chosen nation. The Christians think they're the right. Jesus saved them. The Sunnis think they're right. The Shias think they're right. So is it really possible that all of us are right? Or is it possible that all of us might be wrong and there is something else which is right? Because if right is actually truth and truth is haqq, and if truth holds that power in it to unite, because truth is Allah's name, al-haqq, and can the truth, al-haqq, be wrong? Can the source of goodness, Allah being the source of goodness, he says everything is in God's hand and everything in God's hands is good. If al-haqq is good, then is it possible that goodness could lead to differences and separations? So what I understand from this verse, when it is being said, "Oh, you who have believed, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet." To me, what it is saying is, do not go above and beyond what the Prophet taught you in terms of goodness and righteousness. What does the verse go on to say? Or be loud to him in speech like the loudness of some of you to others. The way we are bickering amongst ourselves, do not think that you can do that with the Prophet, because if you do, you think you are right. You think you are right? This is why you do certain things, because you think you are right. You're fighting for the voice of the Prophet, you're fighting for the voice of Islam, you're fighting for the voice of Imam Ali, you're fighting for the voice of XYZ. You are fighting for the voice of, you're voicing it, right? This is what we say, activism is about voicing. Do not make it louder than the voice of the Prophet. So what we need to do is go back and look at the life of the Prophet and say, when was it that he raised his voice? What were the moments of Prophet's activism? Did he throw people out of his house because he said Jews are all wrong? Did he throw people out when they were antagonists, when they were vultures? Let me give you an example. He went to Taif. The Prophet of Islam goes to Taif, a city near Makkah, and God has given him the duty to give the message to them. In his heart, the Prophet is experiencing some very, very intense mystical experiences. He knows he's on the truth. In every way, he knows that he's on the truth. He goes to Taif, he tries to give his message. What do people do? They pelt him with stones to the extent that his sandals get filled with blood. And Hazrat Jibreel alayhi salam can't see this pain of the Holy Prophet. So he comes to the Prophet and he says, "O Prophet, if you tell me now, I can overturn this city, I will bring the azab, the wrath." And the Prophet said, "No." What does he say? They're just children. They're ignorant. They don't understand. If they really understood what they're missing out, if they really understood what they're doing, they wouldn't be doing this. They need time. Perhaps he was saying they need time to awaken to the truth. They're asleep. Let them be. It's okay. Give them time. Even out of sheer antagonism and persecution, we see this man showering them with love, ikhlaq, goodness. We see that the Prophet brings the ruling about, alcohol comes and alcohol has been made haram. And I repeat this again and again for myself. And everybody knows now that Muslims are not allowed to drink. And a few people, friends of the Prophet, come to him and they say, "The Prophet, there's this man who is still drinking and you need to call him out because it's haram now and he's still drinking. So you know what we will do? We've made a plan. We'll go to his house and catch him red-handed with all these bottles of alcohol, and then you can teach him a lesson." And what does the Prophet do? He goes a few hours early, doesn't say anything, very quietly starts to clean up all the bottles from his house and hides them away. And this man is in utter shock and awe that he's not being reprimanded, he's not being shamed, he's not being made to feel guilty, none of it. And then the friends walk in and they can't see any bottles anywhere. They have nothing to say. They can't catch him red-handed. They just meet him, say hello, hi, and they go. And the Prophet leaves. But this man is so moved by this beautiful ikhlaq of the Prophet that he falls at his feet. He says, I want to be with you. Wherever you go, I want to be with you. Whatever you're teaching, I want to learn that. So beautiful. So that is the prophetic way. And to go above and beyond, thinking that we have a voice better than his, we have a logic better than his. We have to do the activism that he never did, or Imam Ali never did. That we can somehow be better off knowing something which they didn't know, they didn't understand. That now we can do that. What is Allah saying? Lest your deeds become worthless while you perceive not. So this message is not for people who are outrightly going against the Prophet. This message is not for people who are openly saying, yeah, Prophet did this, but we don't want to do this, and we will do X, Y, Z. This is not for those people. This is for those people who in their oblivion think that they're doing Islam a favor, that they're doing their deen a favor, that they're somehow defending God, that they're somehow protecting the honor of the Prophet. Why? Because the Quran is very clear. You're doing something which you think is a good deed. You don't perceive that it is worthless. You don't even know it is worthless. So if you raise your voice against the Prophet, if you try to go above and beyond the ikhlaq of the Prophet, if you think that you know better how to deal with the preservation of religion and you come up with your own ways of doing it in an antagonist way, in an offensive way, then we have to be very, very mindful that, they say that shirk enters the heart of a believer like a black ant. It's a hadith, like a black ant walking on a black stone on a black night. Why? Because it's so imperceivable. The Quran is saying you will not perceive it, but your action will be worthless. So many times we indulge in actions which are simply a worship of the self, a worship of the ego. We don't do it because we have any loyalty, sadly, to the Prophet, because if we did, we would put him in such a high esteem. We would put him at such a pedestal. We would never, ever do anything that he never did. He was not interested in fighting. He was not interested in this kind of activism. I mean, we see he stayed in Sheba Abi Talib for a whole year, right? We never hear one incident of him losing it, getting rash, bashing somebody, There's a civility, there's a calmness, there's a faith, there's a patience, there's a sabr, there's a prayer in the demeanor of the Prophet. Because even on a very superficial level, what happens to us when a child or minor child, I look at a man who is aggressive, even if he's right, to see a man who is aggressive, who can just blow somebody a punch, who can get out of the car in the middle of the road in terms of road rage, even if he was wronged, it scares us. That person scares us. We feel unsafe around a person who is aggressive. And Prophet came as a safety for everybody. And I would like to just come to the closing of our session. Imam Zain al-Abidin, once he was entering the city with his slave, there was a man who was a slave, he was with him. Imam Zain al-Abidin used to get a lot of slaves, he used to educate them, and then used to free them. So that was another chapter. There was a movement towards freedom. So Imam Zain al-Abidin had some food and supplies with him, with his slave. He was about to enter his city after some traveling. And he sees a man who is almost unconscious, moaning for help, lying alone on the, in the desert or in the ground and needing help. When the Imam goes near this man, he puts his head on his lap, starts to give him water, starts to feed him. The slave goes near, sees who this person is, and then moves back and refuses to be of any help, doesn't want to nurse this person. So he just watches the Imam very fervently helping this man and being there for him and everything. And now he's intrigued and he says, Imam, don't you know who he is? And Imam says, yes, I know who he is. Like, no, I don't think you know. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing this. Like, what do you mean? Like, do you know that he's one of the harshest enemies of Islam? And you've put his head in your lap and you're feeding him food? Wouldn't it do us a lot of good if he were to just die? There'd be one less enemy for Islam. And Imam Zain al-Abidin turned around and he said, right now, he's just a human being in need. And I'm just a human being helping him. And that's it. So that human feeling of being kind, of being loving, of being a source of safety even to your enemy, that is what the Prophet taught us. So what happened on my art group then is that I told them that I do not want to do anything that my Prophet wouldn't do. And even if I am alone here, I will stay alone here. If everybody wants to leave, you can leave. I will not tell anyone to leave and I will not throw anybody out. That is just not the prophetic character. I will not bash and I will not allow anybody to bash this person in my space. And this is what the Prophet taught us, to be a source of safety. What crime had this person committed that I can persecute her? What right did I have to judge or make that judgment or make that call? I didn't. And for today's session, actually, I had taken out some verses, more verses from the Quran about Yawmiddin. And I wanted to go back to the idea of judgment. So, because I was just saying about judgment, that, Yawmiddin is defined as the day on which no self will control anything for another self. In other words, each person must be completely and utterly responsible for himself right now, without making the excuse of having responsibilities for others prior to taking responsibility for himself. For ultimately, there is only one self. Each person is responsible for everything. No one is separate. But first, we must know who we are. If we have done that, then we can greet the day of reckoning with light hearts. This was Sheikh Fazl Al-Hairi from his book, Beams of Illumination from the Divine Revelation. It's his commentary on Juz Amma. And the verse I had taken was verse number 19 of Surah Al-Infitar. And so in that moment, I chose to be responsible for myself. I chose this was God's help, because my teachers guided me in this direction. I was very confused. But in that moment, I had a vision. And I thought, I have this tiny little world happening in this tiny WhatsApp group. If I can make peace here, perhaps there is hope that we can make peace in the world. If we can't even coexist and live together and understand each other and talk with civility on a small WhatsApp group, what hope will be left for the rest of the world? And in my way, I felt like I just wanted to be responsible for myself. And there were people who left the group. There are people who are still there, lots of them. And there were people who thought what I did was very brave and good, which was very comforting to my heart to see that there are like me-minded people out there who believe in goodness, in unity, and who celebrate the prophetic way of life. And only if we can be responsible for our own actions in our own little way and take responsibility for who we are, and letting the judgments of other people be left to God. And if we can work our best for peace, unity, and harmony, then perhaps we have hope that little by little, drop by drop, we can mend these broken hearts and wounds that the world is suffering from. And be our own accountables and not accountable for other people. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. I would like us to raise our hands in dua. Oh Allah, somehow today I come to you with a heavy heart. The discord, the pain, the separation, it hurts our hearts, good hearts, beautiful hearts with beautiful intentions. And we hurt so much. The news is so painful. The things that happen around us are so painful that sometimes we don't realize why we're feeling depressed, why we're feeling sad, why we're down. But as my teachers say, it's because we're all connected and we're all one. And the Holy Prophet said we're like one body. And when one part hurts, all the part hurts, whether they like it or they don't, whether they're aware or they're not. So, oh Allah, some days become very heavy when you see the pain in others' lives, when you see the pain around, oh Allah, ease everybody's hearts. Oh Allah, bring your solace, light, healing, love, compassion, and unity into everybody's hearts, especially the ones who are suffering, especially the ones who are crying out for help, especially the ones who are obliviously and not knowingly caught up in their egos and their suffering and they're in pain. Oh Allah, we pray to you to open their eyes to love and compassion. They say hurt people, and the Prophet understood this so well. He said, well, hurt people, but let me be the healer. Let me be the one who brings joy and healing to them. Oh Allah, enable us. Oh Allah, I ask this prayer from the depth of my heart. Oh Allah, enable us to emulate the prophetic way where we can find that light and compassion in our hearts to spread it to others. Fill us so much that it overflows to others. Oh Allah. Oh Allah, we give you the permission to open our hearts to healing, forgiveness. Oh Allah, I ask you today that we are ready with our hearts open for you to fill it with the healing that the world needs. Oh Allah, make us worthy and use us as your conduits to spread this light and love to the rest of the world, because so many days our hearts get so heavy with the pain around us. You are the Shafi, you are the healer. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. So, Alhamdulillah, our session ends here, but I would like to see the chat if we have any messages or questions. And I have someone last night contact me and in a really bad state. Please just think of this person in your heart and make a special prayer for this special person, that things get better for them, their heart heals and their relationships heal, and they find the peace and tranquility that they're searching for, because there are so many souls in pain. And prayer is our only way to be there for someone at times. So I really request you to keep this person in your heart and make a special prayer. Okay, so in my chat, I have this message from Ghulam Uncle. Thank you, Uncle, for always being prompt with your message. You talked about the movie Lady of the Heaven. I have seen the abstract of the movie, and it seems that it has been produced to create the divide between Shias and Sunnis. Prophet Muhammad was a man who possessed the highest moral excellence, and God made him a good example or a goodly model for Muslims to follow. Would you say then that the true Islam died after the Prophet's death? Wayne Dyer always used to say, if you have a choice to be right or kind, then choose kindness. Yes. Maybe I'm biased, Uncle. So what my heart says is that because I'm really, really fond of Islam itself, because I've studied Buddhism and I've studied so many different religions, and the love I have for Quran and the meaning I find in the prophetic character, that is what I call Islam. That has not died. Islam lives in all those people who have a good character. Islam lives in all those people who believe in goodness, kindness, unity, compassion, and love. Because Islam started with Adam and it kept getting modified, and its perfection culminated, its message culminated with the Holy Prophet. And Islam is nothing to do for me. Islam is not the namaz that we pray in a particular number. It's not just the fasting we do in Ramadan. It's not just the Hajj we do in Makkah. Islam is a good heart, an open heart, a heart connected to the divine that receives the light. That is Islam. Islam comes from the word taslim, surrender. And any surrendered heart that is surrendered to divine is Islam, is a Muslim. That is what I call Islam. Because all of the religions that came, all the monotheistic religions that came, they came from that one source. They're all Islam. Can Islam die? That definition of Islam in my heart cannot die. Because as long as there is God, there is goodness. God is goodness. So for me, no, Islam didn't die after Islam. Muslim Ummah died. The unity died. The people who were sincere got corrupted or died or vanished or whatever. The legacy was not practiced, but it didn't die. And why I say that? Because there's a principle I believe in, and it has been something that has guided me in many occasions and kept me steadfast, is the principle of the less. So while the majority of the Ummah might have derailed, and while the majority may have lost the past and lost the vision of the Prophet, there was always a minority that was still very loyal to Prophet in their actions and deeds and words and heart and intention. Even if that was one, even if that was two, but they were always more than one or two. That's just a number. So the principle of less says that your quantity doesn't matter. Even if there is one person holding the flag of goodness and truth, truth lives. So in that sense, we will always have the saints and the friends of God who may be in hiding, who may be in the open, who may pretend to have lost their minds, but they're still giving their message. I'm referring to different people right now, and time doesn't allow me to elaborate more, but they will always be saints of God at every given time on this planet Earth, who practice goodness, who practice beauty, who practice the divine light, who emulate and emit this divine light. So Imam Hussain was alone, but the truth lived till today. That truth lives. The truth that truth is the utmost, that lives. And as long as there is even one heart that believes that, believes in truth and goodness, even that lives on. So the principle of less is something that I believe in, and I say, even if I'm the only one, I will practice goodness and truth. And there are so many like-minded people like you all. There's a community of people out there. We see them, social media connects us. There's so many of us who believe in goodness, even amongst Muslims. If we feel like Muslims have completely derailed, I've got a message in chat. Thanks for the beautiful clarification about Islam. I meant the divide that we have in this day and age. So, even at the time of the Prophet, when Medina became the center of Islamic work, there were still hypocrites at the time of the Prophet. There were still people who were creating discord, who were trying to break, but as the world has grown, as time has passed, I find that we still have a community of Muslims who are loyal to the Prophet and the Quran, who still believe in unity, who still believe in goodness, who still believe in akhlaq, who will still believe in uniting all religions, all sects, all faiths, who are surrendered, who are not egoistic. And that is why I would say that, yes, the divide came, it was catastrophic, it's heartbreaking. Mainstream is very painful. The mainstream is very upsetting to see. But has it vanished and died completely? No, because death would mean it has completely vanished, right? So yes, it has diminished, but it isn't gone. And it's very important that I say this. You know why? Because Even if there is one person with that light, the candle is still lit. And one candle has enough power to light another candle and another candle and another candle. And if the room is entirely dark, one candle can still show us the way. So when we generalize and we give these sweeping straight statements sometimes, which comes not because we want to be negative, but because we're so heartbroken and pained by the situation, it can create a lot of hopelessness. It can create a lot of this feeling of giving up, like, what's the point now? Why should we even work hard or whatever, right? But I'm seeing a lot of hope. And I'm seeing especially the youngsters, because they're so blunt and they're so honest and they don't, let me use the word, they don't take bullshit, I'm sorry I have to use the word, but they don't go around the bush, they don't play around the bush. They will not accept muddled answers because they're so truth focused and they're so blunt that we have hope for truth and goodness to survive, because these young hearts won't take incomplete, unacceptable explanations. And truth needs no defense. When the Prophet would say, Aliyo ma'al haq wa haq ma'al Ali. Truth is with Ali and Ali is with truth. It's like, it's there. Truth will say that it is true. It doesn't need a defense. So because the new generation is asking so many questions, because we have so many forums to answer these questions, because there is so much curiosity, because we have so much honesty, a lot of the veils of hypocrisy are being shed. And the more we go towards the true Islam, which is not just the rituals, but the truth that God has been sending to us through his prophets from Hazrat Adam till Prophet Muhammad, it has a lot of hope. So politically, yes, there was a divide and it was a sad day, but even then the chain of people who carried on the tradition of the light of the Prophet lives on. They go in hiding, they don't make themselves obvious, they do their work that they need to do in their closed circles, but they're there. And God is the one who sustains them. So there's hope and there's good news, inshallah. Allah is with the ones who stand with the truth, even if they're less. So, Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. Thank you everyone for a beautiful sitting, beautiful gathering, beautiful session of light and love and compassion. I feel all of your love and light. Thank you. I'm eternally grateful for your support and presence. And I request you special duas for me and my family, as you all are in mine. Take care. Allah Hafiz.